these colors out here I've got out is for the cardinal.
Yell action.
Okay, great.
Action.
I don't know if you want to
Action,
start with the
okay.
cardinal. And then
So we were talking about the way that these are drawn in on the birds. We took some time to draw in the size and shape of the pieces to make the flow of the andamento, the direction, obvious, because like the art piece I showed you, that dictates the shape of the bird. So we want the wing to come around like this in a different color from the body so that we know that's a wing. And the coloring in the face and the beak to differentiate them from what's around them. And that's really important. Now these shapes are just suggestions, so they don't have to be precisely that particular shape because that will drive you crazy and it'll take a long time. So anything relatively close to that shape that you know is going to work will be just fine.
So and there's a color code on that cardinal if you need it, but those four
Okay.
colors. Are
So
the ones.
this one will be the wing and that one will be the body, am I right?
Let me see. If you look at right here, and that's right there. I've got it on that color code chart.
Okay, can
Color.
somebody read that for me? And
Orangey color.
You got them.
the breast orangey and that
Right,
wing.
yeah, you got it. And then the beak is that one right there, yeah.
So I'm going to take a moment and cut a few pieces with slight angles because I know that I'm going to need some keystone type shapes to go around this wing.
You mean trapezoid kind of?
Yeah, trapezoids. And I can either cut them in quarters or I can take one of those rectangles and cut 3 pieces. And I have a perfect little trapezoid right in the middle and then a couple thin angled pieces left over, and that works really well to fit in around the nooks and crannies.
Do you want to sit down there, Diane?
Oh, no thanks.
Do you need me to move that chair?
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I do better when I'm working
Standing? Okay.
typically, and then when I get tired, sit, I'll perch on a stool. In my studio at home, I have the table set up
Hi.
for a little bit higher
yeah.
for
Your back.
back support. You know, working like this, it's not possible. But what you can do is get like plumbing, bed risers, yes, bed risers. They make
PVC
something for that.
Put
Or
PVC pipe.
PVC pipe, yeah, just raise the level of your table. So if you're going to be doing a lot of arts and crafts or something like this, it really does make a difference for your back. Okay, so there's a few. And I'm choosing to do this line first because this is the most important line of that wing, because that's defining the shape of it. There is the perfect piece there. It's got that right angle, and then it allows the rest of the line to begin. Most of the pieces will be square. I'm only paying a little bit of attention to what the individual shapes are, but that does help me when I get to these funny little areas because I'll know what to look for. But for the actual line, I'm paying the most attention to the height and the curve. Let's come up here and get the end of that line in place. Remember, that allows us to not end up with a tight little shardy piece on the end because we ran out of room, and we can fill in the middle with those little shardy pieces if we have to. So now I know there's 2 pieces and they have to be about that shape, and we'll have one more thinner piece to fill in that line. So now that the line's done, we can go ahead and begin the next one. And here's a little black piece, so let's go ahead and get that in. I'm holding it over this space, and I see that if we cut it right here, that'll be the right shape. A lot of people prefer taking a Sharpie or something and drawing that line in, because when you lift it up you forget. So that's a good trick to make that easier. And this piece will be a little triangle. And if it's similar to the shape that's underneath, that's perfectly fine. And now we can start the next row. That's a little bit longer than the piece down here, so that prevents that line from going in the opposite direction the way we didn't want it to. And anything that's just a little bit off is fine.
You really should do 3 from each end, kind of.
Yeah, like if I had, maybe I'll do a half piece next.
What I'm saying is you should actually start from that end there and come
Oh
in.
yeah, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that principle.
Yes, there's the piece. So see, that's coming in right halfway there.
Okay.
And we need more square pieces. So most of your pieces will be squarish. So when you're cutting them ahead of time, that's really what you want to focus on. And then having these irregular pieces every now and then help fill in the gaps and make sure that they're keeping that bricklaying action going. So there I have one little bit skinnier piece coming in the middle of the row. So see, this line ended up being a little thinner than the way that we drew it in. So that just means that we'll have maybe an extra line in the middle there. But what's more important is using the pieces that you have, the sizes that you have, rather than being absolutely rigid about the size and shape of the way it's drawn in.
So you're thinking you might have 3 lines here now?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And
We
then
can
you're just getting this straight on the edge is the kind of
Mhm.
idea. Okay.
But we're going to resist the urge to do a straight line here and continue this curving pattern.
Okay.
Because the wing is more
because
important than.
The shape of the wing is more important than that line. And I'm just going to try to be really careful
Right.
to get that edge right. So I'll go
Exactly.
ahead.
Birds have feathers, so it's probably natural for it to be a little irregular.
Yeah, I'm going to just
Are
assume
you
that I can
calling
do
our
this
birds
quickly.
irregular?
And if you want to look at birds, they're right out there.
Yeah, they're not
Some
straight back. They're like,
There's a tip
Well,
mouse
don't
out
tell
there.
them that.
Have you seen them? With the big
They'll be very
eyes.
upset.
You seen them?
Oh,
They
yeah.
think
They're
you're
cute.
straight.
Yeah, that's not one. I'll show you when he comes back.
Oh, yeah.
He lands and gets food and bangs it against the thing and then he'll fly off.
Still slandering our birds.
All of nature is perfect, right?
You
know,
just have
I
to
know I
redefine
am.
perfect at times to time.
Right. We still don't know what mosquitoes are for, though.
Oh, yes, they do.
Birds to feed the bat.
Feed
The
the
bats.
birds.
To feed
Well,
the bats.
Male
Yeah,
mosquitoes
that's
pollinate.
good.
There you
They do?
Yep.
Oh, what'd you say?
Male mosquitoes pollinate.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
they do have something to do.
go. Sorry, mosquitoes, about all those things I said. It was just ladies.
You know,
Wow.
you're acting like spreading disease is not an important natural function.
Right, survival of the fittest.
Oh, boy.
Because actually
These are
it is a
cardinals,
very
not
important
finches, hang
natural
on.
function. Yeah, where would the world be without vultures?
That's true, yeah.
Swimming carcasses.
It would look like a hoarder's house.
So what I'm gonna do there, see this angle? This is a little advanced technique. The angle's not allowing the flow to go rightly,
Right.
so I'm gonna nip it off. And now I have a space where a square can fit. Otherwise, I would have had to cut a really sharp angle to fit in there, and that allowed me to just use one of the pieces that I already have. Okay, now I've got a little keystone to fill in there, right?
Who drew all this out on the? Oh, Diane did it.
Yeah, I transferred the pattern that Mary Jane's husband had created. She blew it up to
Yeah.
full size, and then I traced outside most of it, and then probably some other people came in and finished
Yeah,
it
then
off.
Kevin, once we put the grid on, then we went over again and traced what Diane had done underneath, so we could have some kind of paint by number a little bit.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're actually ending up
Yeah.
with 5 lines there, and the last one is going to be a couple little triangles. So this looks about right. So I'm looking at the shape to be filled and trying to cut something that'll be similar. There we go. So those aren't perfect, but when the grout fills in, it'll appear to be perfect. And we've got a nice clean line there.
That's great.
I'd like to also show the leaves and talk about that technique because that's a little different. Do you have any of the green?
Yeah, with
Dark.
the colors.
It would be the dark green 3.
Well, there's,
Number 3 or number 2.
That's
Oh
a
yeah,
2.
perfect.
No, that's the wrong color.
well, there's the real dark right there. See
Yeah,
that
this
four?
is perfect. So this is the number 3.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Okay, good.
Was there a darker one?
Plastic things.
What's that?
That's a 2.
That looks darker than, where's the three? That's dark.
Yeah, they're numbers,
Yeah.
all those are numbered, so just follow the number if in doubt.
Okay.
So the leaves, we're using a different technique because of the size and shape of them. They're all irregular, so it becomes really difficult to do this technique when the shapes are irregular. So there's another technique, we call it crazy paving, which is basically taking pieces of various sizes and shapes and piecing them together like a puzzle. So the process is to take your square tiles and cut them into a variety of shapes. And I like to make that a game and just aim for as many different kinds of shapes I can come up with. Make them as varied as I can, and then that gives me more options.
Y'all want water? There's an ice chest out there with no ice in it because it's cold.
So, once I have a lot of pieces cut up, then you can either lay it out ahead of time, which we can do, and then glue it down. So I'm going to start with my edge, right, because those edge pieces are really important to get straight. That's pretty straight, so I'm going to go ahead and glue those down. And then because I like to just go for it, and we want this to be 1 hour, not 6, I'm going to just start laying this out.
There's the crazy example.
So again, I'm taking a variety of different shapes and sizes and laying them out along the lines of the pattern. And like with the bird wing, I'm doing the edges first. And I'm being careful not to make them all straight and even, but to vary the sizes and shapes as much as I can.
This is probably in some ways a great thing for kids to do. They're not so particular about it has to be like perfect.
Oh,
you
kids'
know?
classes are great. They just go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could just
Yeah, they
see
have a
kids-
lot more freedom than we
Yeah,
do.
right.
Now, their lines won't be
Yeah, right, but
straight.
still, the crazy
but-
part of it, you know,
yeah.
this type of thing would be like, oh, they just really
Yeah.
get into that.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I love doing the kids' classes. It's a very different kind of class, though, for sure. So here I've left myself with a tiny little triangle to fill in, so I'm going to have to cut that one special. So I do pay attention to what's going on around the pieces I'm laying down, to notice if it's going to leave enough space for another piece, because you can work yourself into a corner if you leave a lot of little charred areas to fill in.
You had said over on the other piece there that it was very rare that you would want to use a triangular piece, but for this it's just
Yeah,
different.
for that technique, yeah, because the triangle is going to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Here it doesn't because it's part of the flow, but if I put a triangle right in there,
It breaks it
your
up.
eye would
Yeah.
just go right to it. But here, it's okay.
Do we have it marked somewhere, like what style and which place? Because like water and birds are the
Yeah.
keystone.
Yeah, the leaves are the only area where we're doing
Okay,
this
crazy.
technique.
Yeah,
So
Great.
that's all the green.
And this,
Yeah.
this handout has all the techniques,
Great.
which is talking about the water, and this is, it's called crazy paving for the leaves, so all that's,
Cool.
and I've got a little instruction sheet too, some tips from she had given me before.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so in the crazy paving, I don't want all triangles. I want rectangles and trapezoids and five-sided shapes.
Anything that fits.
Anything that fits. So here now I've got a long rectangle shape,
I
so I'm
think
going
I'll
to
do
look
birds.
for that.
Crazy.
Yeah, you'll find you will gravitate toward the
Yeah, one you like
area
more.
that you feel best about.
You know,
So I can't
crazy,
find
crazy
just the right
hey,
one.
takes a lot of sanity.
It's harder than it looks.
Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, it does. Takes a little bit of focus. Especially because we're filling in these small shapes, so that's a little harder than if you were doing a whole expanse where you could move along a lot more quickly.
Looks good. Looks great.
So that gives us a sort of amorphous shape without having to worry about lining everything up, because, you know, in these areas, it's just really, really hard to line everything up like that.
And it looks like a leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and when you get it all in there with the different colors, it's going to be gorgeous. But the most important thing is aim for as many different kinds of shapes as you can. You saw I used that long rectangle, just smaller rectangles, trapezoids. Five-sided pieces are fantastic. They'll fill in all sorts of weird little shapes. And,
So what about the little bits of blue in between the leaves at the top?
How do we get the flow going there? Yeah.
You're going to use your squares and trapezoids and aim for something that's relatively linear in this direction. So you focus your lines coming this way.
That's what I was wondering too, instead of
Okay.
going down with them.
Right,
Okay.
right. So if this thin shape, you might think just two lines going that way would make sense, but then when you grout it, you'll see.
You really want three
You'll see
lines
that
that
line.
way.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And it's a subtle distinction, but when you grout it, you'll see how it makes a difference. So frankly, I wouldn't worry too much about whether this is going to line up with this,
Oh,
because your eye won't see that as well as it just sees the motion. So don't make yourselves crazy about that being exactly
okay.
perfect. It's going to be close enough.
So just as a question on these leaves and that blue, it'd be better to do the leaves first and then fill in with the blue?
Absolutely, that's a
Okay.
good point, yes, definitely. You want to do the things first that have the particular shapes that you're concerned about, and then basically the water becomes the background there.
Okay.
Right.
So the birds, the leaves, and the water.
Mhm.
So this color is number 3.
Yeah, so 3,
Oh, hey, Kenneth. I just noticed you.
Lived in on.
Hmm.
It's all marked on that little tile sheet over there too. Right?
Mhm.
They're all marked.
yeah. So this is, you know, somebody may enjoy cutting up the pieces, and they're good at getting a good variety. So that would be a good job for that. And then somebody else may find that they really love this
You
technique,
don't mind?
and those are the people that should fill in there.
Uh-huh.
Play to your strengths.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
You should probably also lay in the browns for the stems earlier on, maybe after the leaves, because the leaves will morph into slightly different shapes than they are just sort of naturally. Like I had a point over here that wasn't on the paper down below.
Yeah.
So birds first, leaves second, stems third, background fourth.
Okay. So for something as thin as this, would you just do a single line?
Yeah. Okay. And I wouldn't worry too much about whether it's
Super
perfect,
Yeah.
thick or thin, because it's
It's
nature. It's nature, so whatever it is, but just one line.
I'm wondering if, I know you've got somewhere to be, if you would, do you have a minute to just take one quick look at the finished product out there and give us a quick, do this, don't do that, change this, rip this up, just a quick, this one piece out there, it's called